Motherhood. 1 minute, you're mom of the year.
I love you, Mommy.
Then the next, not so much. From bath time to bullying, from potty training to puberty, parenting is full of challenges. But one thing is for certain, you are not alone. Welcome to Modern Mom Probs. I'm your host, author, mother, parenting expert, Tara Clark. Join me while we tackle today's modern mom problems. Welcome back to another episode of Modern Mom Probs, and welcome back to our 4th season. I cannot believe that we are 4 seasons deep into this show. We're nearly at 150 episodes in total, and that is so many interviews and personalities and questions and just stories and all of the things. And I'm so grateful that you're here for this wild ride with me. And today it's just you and me, because I'm doing a solo episode, which is always so awkward for me because I love engaging with other people. I love a proper conversation. So today it's just us. And you know what we're talking about today? We are talking about modern mom problems. And you're like, yeah, Tara, you always talk about modern mom problems. And that's true. But usually we're doing it with a certain focus, or I'm doing it with my guests. But today we're going to be talking about the top 10 most common modern mom problems. Many times I'm asked to be a guest on someone else's podcast, and they're always like, hey, Tara, let's talk about modern mom problems. And I'm like, yeah, of course, that's what I do. And then I realized that I never actually talk about it in the same way on this show, because I'm always sharing about it on other people's shows. And so I thought to myself, well, why wouldn't I just have that same conversation here with you? And so that's what we're going to do. I'm going to run through what I see as the top 10 most common modern mom problems. And these tend to be things that come up a lot, whether it's in podcast conversations or whether it's on social media or conversations that I have with other parents in my community. And so these are like the recurring themes over and over again. And it's not that this is like a hard, fast, factual rule, but it is what I've seen anecdotally about from doing this job for the last 8 years or so, which is kind of wild to think that we've been doing it so long. But this is what people are talking about. And I think it's important to have a conversation about it, have dedicated an entire podcast episode about it, because like I said, I'm frequently talking about this on everyone else's show. And it's like, well, why wouldn't we just do it here? So let's do it here together. So what I would say to you is grab your favorite emotional support beverage. I have mine. It's a big tumbler of water. I did just pound an iced coffee before this started. So who knows how jazzed I'm going to be during it, but grab your emotional support beverage, hide in the closet if you have to, and let's get to the top 10 modern mom problems. Again, in no particular order, but I just wanted to make sure that we're covering everything. So kicking us off at number 10 is maternal mental health. We're seeing increased rates of anxiety, depression, postpartum issues among modern moms. It was especially harder during the pandemic. Luckily, now we are post-pandemic. Things are back to normal as much as it can be given our current climate in the world. But we have to acknowledge that it is vital to talk about these struggles and to prioritize our mental health. And recently I was selected by the Mental Health Coalition to be a mental health champion, which it's so awesome. So give them a follow. And the Mental Health Coalition provides great information, real practical information on their social channels about everyday things that you could do to protect your mental health. And if it gets beyond a situation beyond your own control, then absolutely seek professional help, see a therapist, see a psychologist, psychiatrist. It's so important to know that you're not alone and that help is always available. So number 9, financial strain. Let me tell you, the cost of raising children these days is astronomical. Between childcare, extracurriculars and education, it just adds up. I was chatting with my husband yesterday, and he was saying that a good friend of his said, I can't wait until my kids are in college. And my husband was like, why? He's like, oh my gosh, I can't begin to tell you how much money I'm going to save when my kids are in college because they're in so many extracurriculars right now. They're doing karate, they're doing language, they're doing sports. It's just so many different things. And so I thought that was funny because like everybody knows how ridiculously expensive college is, but also extracurriculars can really add up on that. And so with the cost of inflation right now and everything like that, it definitely adds up. So it's a constant juggling act trying to provide for our families while trying to stay afloat given the current economic climate. Number 8, body image issues. This one could say, you know, Tara, this isn't actually a modern mom problem because this has been going on for a very long time. And I would totally agree. You're right. I know that my mom and her friends in the 70s really struggled with body image issues and eating disorders. And my mom used to say that, you know, everyone would just walk around the track getting exercise, but also smoking cigarettes at the same time, which nowadays is like mind blowing to think that you were exercising and smoking at the same time. But their quest was just to be thin. And meanwhile, they were on this like grapefruit diet. So they're consuming like 500 calories a day, smoking and exercising. And they were just trying to be this like a epitome of thinness and beautiful, like Farrah Fawcett hair girl from the 70s. And so that is not necessarily a modern mom issue. It is something that, you know, carries with us and through us through the generations. But I still think it needs a place on this list because societal pressures to bounce back after having a baby and to conform to these unrealistic beauty standards after pregnancy, post-pregnancy, all of those things is just immense. It can be so crushing. So it's important to embrace our bodies and thank our bodies. In my one Pilates class, the teacher always says at the end, it's sort of her mantra. She says, thank you, body, thank you, body, thank you, body. And I like to take that when I work out as well, because I'm so grateful for being able to do the exercises and the movements and all of those things. So it's important to thank our bodies and embrace them for what they look like. You know, my body does not look like what it did 5 years ago, 10 years ago. And we have to just know that it's okay, that we can accept it for what it is, and that it's not good, bad, or indifferent, that it does what it needs to do. It achieves what it needs to do, right? And it doesn't make me bad if it's a little saggier or a little heavier than it was. It's important to sort of have a body neutrality, right? That you're not good or bad because of the way that you look. You are. And I accept that. And I accept the body that I'm in now. And I love the body that I'm in now. Could I walk more? Could I walk 10,000 steps a day? Yeah, that would probably be amazing. And that's a goal that I'm going to put on myself. But if I don't, it doesn't mean that I'm a bad person. And it doesn't mean that I'm any less worthy of love. Number 7, work-life balance. Oh, I hate the phrase of work-life balance. I like to say work-life harmony or effectiveness, right? But people always love to just put balance together as like the phrase. And I've said this for a long time, but it's like you have to strive for work-life effectiveness. When you're with your family, are you pouring yourself into that and focusing on them? And then when you're doing work, you're pouring yourself into that and you're being effective there, right? If you're trying to do quote unquote a balancing act, you know what happens when you're balancing all of the plates, right? I'm sort of like showing plates on a tray. One thing's going to be off and then the other one's going to be off and then it's going to tip and it's going to cause a big giant crash, right? So you have to learn where you can be effective and where you could have harmony one way or the other, because juggling the demands of career and motherhood, it leads to burnout. It leads to guilt. It can lead to shame. And so this whole concept of the work-life balance is a myth, right? So you're trying to juggle deadlines, school pickups, and everything in between. And then also like you're supposed to like smile and look beautiful and all of those things like during that, right? Like that's a myth. It's all a myth. like I said, what you should really focus on is how can I be effective in what I'm doing right now, whether it's spending time with your children or whether it's you at work or whatever it is that you're focusing on at that time. And so you have to compartmentalize yourself sometimes, where it's like when I'm with my family, I'm really trying so hard just to be with my family. And when I'm doing work stuff, I'm trying so hard just to do work stuff. When I try to do all of it simultaneously, that's when the plates start to crash off of the proverbial tray. So work life harmony, let's say, is definitely a major modern mom problem. I would be curious to hear how you work through that. And I think a big part of it also is delegation, right? It's important to be able to hand some of those plates off of your tray to other people if you can, to lighten your load, to lighten your tray. But we're going to get into delegation in a little bit as well when I get to the mental load of motherhood, but we're not there yet, but we're almost there. Okay, number 6. Parenting as a competition, motherhood as a competition. The parenting industry is now a billion-dollar industry. That is something that is so different from previous generations. That is definitely a modern mom problem. Years ago, parents were just trying to keep their kids alive. They were not necessarily worried about all of the extracurriculars and all of the things that we get so caught up in nowadays. And there's the societal pressure to achieve perfection in like every aspect of parenting, right? And in doing that, that's what's creating this competitive and stressful environment. And so we need to remember there's no such thing as a perfect mom. There is such thing as a happy mom, and our children need to see that we are content with ourselves, that we shouldn't be trying to strive for perfection while making ourselves feel less than, right? And so in saying that, there's the pressure to be like the perfect like Pinterest mom and have like these beautiful like curated birthday parties and lunch boxes and the handmade costumes and stuff. And if that's your bag, then by all means, go for it. Like I love that you are using your expression of creativity, and that's awesome. On the flip side of that, that's not everyone's cup of tea, right? Not everyone has the skill set to do that. And it's the pressure that we see online that's making us feel less than. And so at the end of the day, let's be honest, right? Going back to these elaborate birthday parties, like sometimes a store-bought cake and a pizza party in the basement is totally fine. And the other thing about the competition with parenting too is that not everything always has to be pitted against each other. If you are a very crafty parent, then by all means, like I said, make the homemade costumes, make the elaborate birthday parties. And if someone doesn't feel up to that, or it's not in their budget or not in their wheelhouse, then that's okay too. What is really challenging in modern day parenting is this pitting against each other, right? Is this parenting as a competition? And so if we can support each other, understand where each other would be coming from, that is so important. And I really try to stress that in my community and with my friends. Like, parenting is not a one size fits all thing, right? And it never was. But now when we see everything online, we just assume like, oh, well, this is what we have to be doing. This is the right way. This is what we need to be doing. And it's so sticky, and it's really not healthy, And going back to things not being healthy, like online, there is a constant flow of information and misinformation. And there's like an endless amount of parenting advice online. And so it's hard to know like what's right, what's wrong, from sleep training to nutrition to, there's like so many different things. Like everyone has an opinion. It's often conflicting. It's like, how do we filter through that noise and trust our own instincts? And what I would say to you is like, try to weed through the noise, take what works for you and your family, for you as an individual, and just leave the rest of it behind. Leave behind those societal expectations, leave behind the pretty pictures that you see on Instagram, and do what works for you and your family. Okay, we are halfway through. Things are starting to get real. Number 5 is excessive screen time. So, again, a modern mom problem that didn't necessarily exist for previous generations, but here we are now in the throes of the 21st century and in the throes of very addictive devices in our hands. And there, have been so many different reports and books. The Anxious Generation by Jonathan Haidt is a phenomenal read. Highly recommend it to any parents that are modern parents, 21st century parents, anybody that would possibly be handing their kids a smart device anytime soon. The impact of technology on both children and us as parents can hinder our genuine connection and then also contribute to anxiety. In Jonathan Haidt's book, he explains how this generation has a heightened level of anxiety because of the algorithms on these platforms, on these devices, all of these things. And so we as parents are trying to find a healthy balance with screens, not only for our children and our teenagers, but also for ourselves, because there's a lot of modeling that goes into that with our families and with our children. I often have seen even boomers on screens more than even some of the younger generations sometimes. And even my son will remind me, hey, mom, put your phone down. We're spending time together. Or, hey, mom, put your phone down. We're about to sit down and have dinner. So it's not just the younger kids. It's all of us. It really is. We are in the grasp of this technology, right? We just have to be very mindful, set boundaries when we're using it, not only in front of our children, but also for ourselves and when we're with our partners. It's important to try your hardest not to have your phone in your bedroom at night or put it somewhere where it's not in arm's reach away. So it's not the first thing you do in the morning. It's not the last thing that you do at night, so that you could sort of clear your mind out from that and let your mind wander. Because it's important for us to be bored sometimes, not just for the kids. It's great for the kids to be bored sometimes for their creativity, but it's great for us to be bored sometimes too, just to sort of let our minds wander. And screen time, it's a bigger conversation than just this, because it's not only is it the little kids, it's also the tweens, it's the teenagers, and it's us as adults, right? So I have another episode just dedicated to screen time. It came out a couple of weeks ago, so you probably would be able to find it. It's another solo episode, and I'm talking about taming the screen fiend and trying to live in harmony with our screens. So that's a dedicated episode. Check that one out. Number 4, this is a really big one, and it was hard for me to not make it number 1, but it's definitely up there. Lack of an in-person village. That is one of the prevailing modern mom problems. Historically, families lived closer together. The families were also larger, so there was more of a chance for your grandmother, your auntie, your sisters to maybe live in the same block, maybe live in the same building, and you could rely on people to watch your children if you needed to run to the store, if you had errands to do, and people were more apt to help out. Nowadays, our families live all across the country, all across the world. Families are smaller and more divided, and that's leaving many modern moms feeling unsupported and overwhelmed, right? We crave that village that previous generations had, and it's hard to find that support system. So what are modern moms doing nowadays? In addition to creating our own villages online with friends that we've met online, or another thing is paying for a village, right? Sometimes you have to pay a babysitter to pick your kids up from school. Sometimes you have to pay for, a housekeeper, a nanny, all the different things that sometimes in previous generations people would have had together in person that might have been free. And now we have to dip into our pockets to pay for and create the village that we need to keep our modern lives running. But this lack of support system is leading us into number 3. It's leading us into loneliness and isolation. I always tell people when I speak about this that the lack of the in-person village is directly related to loneliness and isolation. And this is not just for modern mothers. This is an epidemic across the board. The US Surgeon General had labeled loneliness an epidemic. We are living in a very connected world through our devices. And then at the same time, we are very isolated and we are alone and we are in our own houses scrolling this content, but not really connecting with each other on a meaningful level. And that is a huge problem. When my son was little, we were living in New York City, and I didn't have a lot of in-person friends because most of my friends were still working at Nickelodeon at the time. And so I had my work friends, but I didn't have like other friends. And so I didn't really know how to meet new moms. And so the only way that I thought to do it was to go to the parks and the playgrounds every day. And so every day we went out and we walked around Central Park and we were often at the playgrounds. And I would chat with moms and nannies and babysitters and all those things. And that was how I was having real adult conversations. Because the other alternative would be is when my husband was coming home from work, and then I would just like word vomit, like blah 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 blah, because I was so excited to see like another adult human to just, like I said, word vomit all over him. But it's so important. Human beings need other human beings. We need to get out of our houses. We need to meet up places in person where we can look at each other in the eye and smile and laugh and just be together. It is so important. I cannot emphasize it enough how we need to sometimes get out of our comfort zone. Cause like, of course I want to be in my sweatpants and scroll Instagram. Like, yeah, I love that. Who doesn't love that? Everybody enjoys staying in the comfort of their own home in their sweatpants if you're a nice, safe home. But it takes a lot to get dressed, put on makeup, get out of the house, go chat with people, and put yourself out there. And at the same time, yeah, that's challenging. But you know what, though? 9 times out of 10, you walk away from a meeting like that being like, I'm so glad I did that. I'm so glad that I got out there and that I put myself out there and I got to meet really great people. Like I said, 9 times out of 10, you walk away from a situation like that saying, I'm so glad that I did that. I'm so glad that I got dressed and I did what I had to do. And whether you have your baby with you or your children with you, or if you were alone, it's so important to get out there and spend time with each other, because the isolationism and the loneliness will just continue to affect your mood and your mental health too. So important. Number 2, the mental load of motherhood. Whew, again, this is a really big topic. This could be an entire episode all by itself. I've actually had several podcast episodes with different guests speaking about this. So check those out. I had Libby Ward on at least once or twice talking about it, and several other folks. And the reason why is because there's a lot to unpack here. There's so many different things. And for people who don't know what the mental load of motherhood is, it's the invisible cognitive work of managing household logistics, appointments, children's needs, who often falls disproportionately on the mothers, right? It is being the default parenting, which can be very exhausting. And part of this leads to mom guilt and shame and judgment from other moms. It leads to sometimes the fear of missing out on certain things from our child's lives, which goes into mom guilt. I don't know. Maybe I should sort of separate mom guilt and the mental load of motherhood, because there's a lot. And like I said, there's so many different modern mom problems, and to cut them down to 10 is pretty tricky, but we'll try to do that. But with the mental load of motherhood, it is remembering all of the appointments. It is the anticipation of many things too. The anticipation of, I know that I need to do X, Y, and Z for my child when he comes home from school before we go to practice and before we do something else. And most of this work falls on the mothers. Most of this invisible labor falls on the mothers, and it could be very draining. And so, well, Tara, like, how do we fix it? What do we do? It's important that you speak with your partner. If you have a partner, speak with them about what they could take off of your plate so that your tray doesn't fall. Going back to the analogy that I was saying earlier about the work-life balance. Where can you delegate? Where can each person take ownership of certain areas of your domestic life? And if you don't have a partner, then try to find someone in your village, whether it's a grandparent or it's an auntie, somebody in your village to help you take some of the onus off of yourself. I grew up in a single family household, and I know that I took a lot of the mental load off of my mom because I was like a little adult, right? Like I would clean the house and I would do all kinds of things. And so my mom and I, we worked really well together because I, being part of her village, took on a lot of that responsibility. Now, whether that's good, bad, or indifferent is probably for a different conversation altogether. But I can just say that when I wasn't taking stuff off of her village, off of her plate, I know that my grandparents were too, right? And so even if you are a single parent, it doesn't mean that you can't look to someone to take some of the responsibilities off of your plate. Okay, we have finally reached number one, which the reason why this one is number one, as opposed to any of the other points, and they are important points, but at the end of each podcast episode, I ask my guests, what do you think is the biggest modern mom problem right now? And I would venture to say that 8 out of 10 of them have said what I'm about to say right now. And because of that high preponderance of number of their answers, I said to myself, I need to put this one as number one. And I don't know, maybe the other ones are more serious, but number one, here we go. Social media comparison. The constant exposure of these idealistic portrayals of motherhood on platforms like Instagram, Pinterest, Facebook, sometimes TikTok even, although TikTok's a little bit more realistic. These lead to feelings of inadequacy, right? And so it's so hard for us, because of the constant exposure, it's so hard for us to remember that social media is a curated highlight reel, right? It is not always reality. And we're constantly bombarded with these images and the beautiful families and their spotless homes with their large white kitchens and all of this. And so it's so easy to fall into the trap of thinking that everyone has it together and that everyone is organized and successful and funny and creative and educated and all of those things. And it makes you feel less than. You're like, oh gosh, my kid is eating Play-Doh and co-sleeping with me, and he should be doing, I don't know, the opposite of those things, whatever it is that you see on social media. And that has become a really large modern mom problem. It is not to say that these kinds of things didn't exist in previous generations. It did. They did, because there were ladies' magazines that were telling you the right way to be or the wrong way to be, or the right way to raise your kids or the wrong way to raise your kids. And there are TV shows growing up that we saw, oh, you want to live like this family or live like that family. But we're holding these devices in our hands and we're scrolling with our free time these platforms, and we're seeing these images and we're being bombarded over and over and over again. You're like, okay, I get it. I need to be thin and blonde and beautiful, and my kids need to wear matching pajamas. I get it. And when I sometimes think, I'm like, oh, well, it's just me. I just feel like that when I scroll too long. But the fact that 80% of my podcast guests say the same answer, I know that it's not just me. And I'm asking people from whether they're authors or therapists or coaches or content creators, like all different folks with different backgrounds, and they're still saying the same answer. And so I want you to know that you are a good parent. You are a good parent, even if your kid is eating chicken fingers and mac and cheese several nights a week, because mine is too, and fed is best, and you are trying your hardest, and whether or not your hardest looks like what a creator is showing online, remember that that is just a highlight reel. It is just a snapshot in time. It is what they want you to see. You're not seeing the background of what their life is or the other rest of the context of that. And so I don't want you to feel bad about the images that you're seeing, because that is just a snapshot. It is what people are wanting to show you. So just know that you are a good parent. There you have it. These are my top 10 modern mom problems. These challenges are real and they impact us all in different ways. It's important to talk about them. It's important to acknowledge them. And even more importantly, it's important to support each other through them. So remember, you are not alone on this parenting journey. We are all navigating these complexities of modern parenting, and we're just trying to do our best, right? And supporting each other and respecting each other is so crucial, because even though we don't parent the same, and even though our lives may be different, we still need each other's support. So until next time, remember to be kind to yourself, be kind to your family, be kind to your friends, and seek support when you need it, because you are an amazing parent. Thank you so much for being here. And don't forget to subscribe to Modern Mom Problems wherever you get your podcasts. Follow me on Instagram, on YouTube, all of those things. And if you have a modern mom problem that I didn't cover today and that you really, really think I should have, leave me a comment or DM me on Instagram. I will get back to you. Thank you so much for being here today. I appreciate you, and keep being awesome. Thanks for listening to today's episode of Modern Mom Probs. I hope you enjoyed our deep dive in today's problem with me, your host, Tara Clark. Join me next time when I'll be interviewing another great guest and tackling another modern mom problem. If you enjoyed today's episode, please leave us a review and a rating. As always, you could head over to Modern Mom Probs on Instagram and give me a follow, or check out my book, Modern Mom Probs, A Survival Guide for 21st Century Mothers, available online wherever books are sold. Well, that's it for today. See you next time, folks.